Sports card hobby family, before I start the video and the topic of today, I've got to share a crazy story, a sports story from last night, and I couldn't sleep last night over this. So my 9-year-old is playing flag football. It's the second season. I coached the first season last year. We did not win a game. We had some close ones. We did not win. It was good kind of just getting a feel for the game and learning it and that sort of a thing. He's in his second season, and they have not won a game all year. You know, morale is a little bit low. We show up to the playoff game last night. One of our best players is not there. We're playing up against a good team, and we are down 25-0 at half. They played two halves, two 20-minute halves. We're down 25-0, and we're kind of thinking, man, I hope that, our son doesn't have a, bad attitude about it. Hopefully he can kind of move on, learn from it, and that sort of a thing. Well, the team comes roaring back. And I don't know what happened in the second half. It was a tale of two games, really. But my son, normally he does play. His strength is on defense. He's a ball hawk. I was yelling out Ed Reed. I was, of course, coaching from the sidelines like a maniac. But he knocked down balls. He had one where he stepped in front of it, hit him right in the hands. He had daylight in front of him, and unfortunately he was not able to pull it in. They scored, and they were going for two and that sort of a thing, and he was batting down balls, playing amazing defense. He did score the third touchdown in the comeback, where basically like a crossing route where everyone just got kind of jumbled up, and he scored it out. The quarterback found him, and he scored that third touchdown, which he was like going ballistic over. But at the end of the game, it's 25-20, and there's 40 seconds left in the game. Somehow, our guy gets behind the defense. Our quarterback launches it, 30, 40-yard play, and we're down with 12 seconds left in the game. You can't spike it to stop it. The clock just runs, so you can't spike it. So you're running down there, and you're just running a play. And they ran a quick play, threw it to the end zone, score to win 26-25 at the buzzer. Oh my God. Yeah. My son's still talking about it this morning. He stayed up all night talking about it. He's autistic, so he gets really locked in on everything that he's doing, and he's so serious about football right now. And it was just one of those moments. I've coached youth sports. I got 4 kids, and I've watched a lot of youth sports. This was a huge moment over my long kind of history of watching and coaching youth sports. This was a huge highlight for our family. So anyway, I just had to share. I think moral of the story is hey, if you're down, you can come back. If you are down in the card market, you can come back. And we're going to talk about some money shifting around today in sports cards. Stick around. What's going on, sports card hobby family? Today we've got some money. It is apparently moving around in the sports card hobby. Before I dive in, huge thanks to today's video sponsor, COMC.com. 35+ million cards in the database. Football, basketball, soccer, non-sports, all sorts of hidden gems out there on COMC. I actually just bought a few cards there last night. There's little things that you don't always see on eBay and some of these other auction sites that pop up. Also, grade cards through COMC. You can send cards off to auction. COMC, it's the place to be in the hobby. Also, Halloween, it's that time of the year. We're going for ugly Christmas sweaters. Fun.com sent me out a few items for me to showcase, and I've got a coupon code down below for you, so make sure to check out fun.com. The other site I'll put down there as well. I believe it's halloweencostumes.com. Either way, all the good stuff, all the 80s, 90s nostalgia. Get the shirts, get the sweatshirts. All right, I was tagged on Twitter, or X, whatever we're calling it these days, by Bruh. Bruh on Twitter tagged me on a post, and I was actually already looking at this, so it worked out kind of perfectly. I'll use kind of his image here. He did some research that he was showcasing, looking at quarterbacks, and it's very clear that there has been people that have kind of held on cards. They've held on certain cards for certain quarterbacks. Maybe they're down a lot, maybe they're up some, just trying to see, kind of speculating and trying to see who's going to break out this year in the NFL. Which quarterback is going to kind of break out from the others, from the pack? And sadly, really what the answer is to that question is none of them. None of them have broken out from the pack. You got 32 horses in the race. There is one, Patrick Mahomes, that is performing well card-wise. On the field, pretty average, but his team is undefeated. So then I guess you're kind of like, well, if he adds another Super Bowl title, that'll be 4 for him, and he's 28, 29 years old or whatever he is. So people are, hey, let's get out of all the spec stuff and we'll move into Mahomes. We'll talk more about this. So, okay, he shows up with some of this data. 2021 class that are not busts, he classifies here. And he's got T-Law, which is kind of like edgy for bust. He's right kind of on the mediocre line, right on the median. We got T-Law, we got Brock Purdy, we got CJ Stroud as the 3 that he's got there. All are down over the last 60 days with market movers data using the player indexes. So I use this all the time just to kind of see what's going on with a particular player. And it's not perfect. It's not a perfect science, but they'll maybe have 40, 50, 60 cards for a particular player and they're tracking price points. So it does give you kind of an idea of where everything is at. But of course, it's not possible to track every single Trevor Lawrence card that's out there in a database. So, take it with a grain of salt, but it is useful to kind of look and see, just get kind of a general idea of what's going on with a player's cards. I like using the player indexes on market movers. So he's looking at the last 60 days that these 3, T-Law, Brock Purdy, CJ Stroud, they're down anywhere between 9 and 26% in that range. The quarterbacks from 2016 to 2020 that have done well and seen some solid growth, although there's one that stands out that's seen really nice growth, and the other ones over the last 60 days, pretty good. And that's Sam Darnold, who, of course, has resurrected his career in Minnesota. Baker Mayfield, who's played well for the Bucs and kind of found a new home, it looks like, down there in Tampa Bay. And Jared Goff, who's just leading the Lions. The Lions got to get over the hump. I'm a New Orleans Saints fan. I'm cheering for the Detroit Lions. They're again kind of in that same Saints bucket. Just one of these franchises that it's really been a tough road. And so I'm cheering the Detroit Lions on. I hope that Jared Goff and those guys get over the hump. Dan Campbell used to be a coach for New Orleans under Sean Payton. I think he actually played for the Saints too. Was he a tight end for the Saints? I believe that he was. Anyway, love Dan Campbell. But you see Sam Darnold, Baker, Jared Goff are really the ones that you've seen some pretty good growth over the last 60 days. And then you look at guys that are really probably the best quarterbacks in the NFL, Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes, and Josh Allen. They have seen kind of minimal growth or slight losses over the last 60 days. I will say I ran a report for Patrick Mahomes in particular over the last 365 days. He's actually up 14, 15% based on the data. And of course, he won a Super Bowl in that time frame as well to kind of put him up over that, the dynasty mode for the Chiefs at 3 Super Bowl wins. And so he's actually seen some pretty decent growth, even though he just has not played. Even going into last season, Chiefs won the Super Bowl in the back of the defense. Of course, Mahomes made some nice plays, and Kelsey last season. This year, they've been non-existent. But really, Mahomes over the last season and a half has been fairly mediocre. Throw his stats up against a lot of the other QBs in the NFL, it's pretty mediocre. But he's a great leader on his team, and their defense is just balling out. So the Chiefs are just one of those teams that look to be like, hey, they're going deep. They're probably the 1 seed. They're probably going deep into the playoffs. Other guys like Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert, it looks like people are finally just moving off of these cards. And what I mean by that is when we've looked at Burrow and Herbert in the past, you've seen kind of like a flat line of like, maybe, they're not doing so great or they've got some injuries or whatever, but hey, we're not really ready to move off of these guys. You got Harbaugh now coaching the Chargers, and I think that's going to be a great thing for the Chargers long term. This season, I'm not so sure about. Joe Burrow and the Bengals have largely underwhelmed to start out their season. They've lost some close games. Burrow's not playing horribly or anything, but he's just not setting the league on fire the same way that he did when, that Super Bowl March. He was just unbelievable. So I don't know, Cincinnati just trying to figure it out there. And so it looks like people are just finally saying, you know what? I don't need to hold Joe Burrow cards, or I don't need to hold Trevor Lawrence cards. I don't know if I really want to hold an expensive Justin Herbert. And maybe this stuff is just hitting auction and people are just moving off of it. And the reason why I say that is because you're finally seeing the minus 20, 30, 40%. Trevor Lawrence is another one of these guys. If you look over the last 365 days, T-Law is down 30, 40, 50%. So I think that people are saying, you know what? I could have my money in better things. We've seen the move towards GOATs. We've seen the move towards 90s inserts. We've seen moves towards just other stuff. And honestly, maybe just out of spec. Because that's what we've been talking about recently, like speculating on certain players and cards versus either putting money into GOATs or PC stuff. I mentioned Alvin Kamara, Drew Brees, or some of my PC guys. Maybe you're saying, you know what, I don't really care about this Herbert or whatever, and I can get out of that card and I can get the best Christian McCaffrey card, Alvin Kamara card, or whatever, or a baseball player, whoever it is that you just really enjoy in PC. Moving more to that kind of PC area of like, man, do I really need to spec on these guys anymore? And I kind of wonder if there's going to be a shift that way. There's always going to be speculation. I do think that it's part of that whole culture of sports cards going all the way back to the 80s. People speculating on Van Poppel and people speculating on Greg Jeffries and some of these guys. Jose Canseco and Mark McGuire, people spending big money. Even Thurman Thomas, 89 score Thurman Thomas. I remember that card being expensive in the card shop in 1990, 1991. People have been speculating on cards going back, really, I think that started heavily in the 80s. And then, of course, it's just gone on from there. So speculating is not going to stop, but I just do wonder, if people are like, people are going to start speculating less on prospects and just saying, you know what, just stick my money into GOATs. If you look at really what's happened here, it feels to me like if you're just buying QBs, a lot of money has just moved into Mahomes. Or Tom Brady, probably. So instead of buying, more Lamar Jackson or more of these new up-and-coming QBs, Kyler Murray, you know what? I'm just going to go Mahomes. I'm shifting money. I'm going to have, at least like 50% of my stuff is going to be Mahomes. The other 50% will be like this other stuff. But I don't need to have all this exposure to all these kind of just newbie guys that I hope do well. The other part of this is they come out of the gate expensive. Look at Wembanyama on the basketball side. Like a lot of spec money on Wembanyama, but the price reflects it. Like the price, it's not like you're buying into Wembanyama like, man, I'm getting a deal on Wembanyama cards. You're not getting a deal on Wembanyama cards. And the new quarterback that comes out, even with like CJ Stroud stuff, Stroud did really well last year. He's looked pretty good this year too. But I mean, like, it's not like they were cheap and then they went way up. They've just been expensive and stayed expensive in large part because the products are delayed coming out. So, the season, he'd already kind of started his rookie season, already started doing great things, and then the products hit, and then it's like, okay, the hype is already there. The hype's already there, and they're already going to be expensive. You're not sneaking in on these cards, and then they go up. So you could argue, look, this stuff comes out overpriced. It's kind of like driving the new car off the lot. Once you drive it off the lot, the value on the new car drops whatever, 15, 20% the first week that you have it just because you drove it off the lot, So this is an interesting time. What is happening here? Are people just saying, you know what, speculating might not be as much for me or just not as much? I don't need to have all my money in T-Law. I can also have some other stuff. I can have Joe Montana or Jerry Rice or Babe Ruth or Michael Jordan or whatever, and then have less into these guys. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, my friends. Is your money moving around in the sports card hobby? Have you been moving around your stuff and changing the way that you collect / speculate / invest in quotation marks? All right, friends, stay healthy, stay awesome. Don't forget to head to fun.com and get an Alf sweater or whatever you want. Talk to you later.